Hello everyone! I am Alice of KHR Arts and Cloud Orchid Publishing, and today we are going to talk about The Arsenic Century by James C Whorton. Now, this particular tome, and it is a beefy tome, y'all, is not for everybody. This is very much this is your special interest book, or you have to do some very specific research about some very specific things. The Arsenic Century is a purely nonfiction account of the history of arsenic throughout the 18th, 19th, and largely 20th century of England, and a little bit of larger Europe, but mainly England. And I picked up this particular book during the height of COVID, and I read it throughout the pandemic because this is a beefy tome and it is a dense read. And it took me a long time to read this book in its entirety, y'all. And I enjoyed it. I enjoyed reading every minute of this because I am also a giant Dorkosaurus and I am a sponge for information, and just it gave me all of the information my brain could have ever wanted. And where this even came from was, I don't really remember how I went down the rabbit hole to cause this to happen. But around that time period, my Facebook feed started showing me stuff about Victorian England and historical stuff, which is not uncommon in my feed. But specifically, it started showing me stuff about arsenic dresses. So arsenic dresses are, during Victorian times, arsenic was used in dyes to make this very iconic shade of green. It was everywhere during the Victorian era. They used it for everything. They used it for decorations, they used it for clothes, they used it for wallpaper, they used it for tiles, they used it for like the little wrappers for candies and food, they used it on toys, everything. They were obsessed with arsenic green, and they didn't realize just how bad arsenic is for you. It is poison. It is literally poison. And they were just living their lives completely covered in arsenic for reasons. And so learning about these arsenic dresses, I just thought that was the coolest thing ever. And then I saw there was a book that would just tell me everything my little heart ever wanted to know about arsenic dresses and about just arsenic in general. And I was like, that seems fun. Let's go down this rabbit hole for no reason. And that's literally the thing. For those of y'all that are wondering, why did Alice have a special interest in poison? I'm sorry to burst your bubble. There was no special overarching reason. It was literally just my brain decided this was interesting and we wanted to learn everything about it, and so we did, which I have done many times in my life where my brain has decided that we're going to learn about all of the information having to do with a very specific topic, and then we just do. This is just part of the habit, y'all. And so this particular book just takes you through all these different aspects of history, of daily life, of economical stuff, of laws that were passed, of how this impacted criminal investigation, just everything. It's just crazy, y'all, how during these 3 centuries, arsenic was behind just everything. It was just so intrinsic to everything in this time that, like I said, they put it on everything. And then also the fact that it was just used for so much crazy stuff that, quite frankly, it just should not have been, but people didn't know any better. They put it in wine because it would help age the wine faster. People ate arsenic tablets because it made your skin beautifully pale and made your eyes big and stuff. Never mind the fact you were going blind and being poisoned. At least you were pretty. All of the everything about, like, the laws that had to be put around, like, it's because of arsenic that we had the beginnings of food safety laws, because it wasn't just arsenic that was a problem back then. They were doing stuff like putting plaster of Paris in bread in order to stretch the flour further. And let me tell y'all, it's one thing to put sawdust in food, which not great, but, won't kill you necessarily. Plaster of Paris will kill you if you eat enough of it. It literally clogs up your digestive system and you'll just die. And people were eating bread full of it simply because there were no laws stopping bakers from doing that. Because, unfortunately, there were plenty of periods of time where the poorest of the poor just had to do whatever they had to do to get by, even if they knew it was not good. And so, because of that stuff, those were the beginnings of food laws, that you can't just put not food stuff in food like plaster of Paris because it will kill people. And it's not food. Just stuff like that is Because of arsenic. Because they were putting arsenic in wine, and they realized that there was no regulation on how much arsenic was being put in wine, and sometimes people got a little heavy-handed, thinking, oh, I'll just make it ferment faster, and then people would drink it and die because it's full of arsenic. So, things like that. And then also how it affected the judicial system in crime, with a lot of women resorted to different methods of poisoning their husbands because that was the only choice they had at the time to be able to escape abusive marriages, or for more unsavory people to get rid of their husbands and take all the money for themselves and live happily ever after however they see fit. And arsenic was a big part of that. And so crime and figuring out, is a person guilty or not? Because honestly, even if we had the testing that we have today, that would still not be enough to convict somebody of poisoning someone with arsenic because, as I said, it was everywhere, okay? They were drinking it in their wine. They were wearing it in their clothes. It was their wallpaper. It was their everything. So, everyone was technically poisoning themselves every minute of every day. It's just, did somebody also slip a little bit in your tea? Somebody also slip a little bit in your morning oatmeal? That's where crime started getting, just really into the beginnings of what we see as modern problem solving with crime, in that let's look at evidence. Because prior to this, looking for evidence was a very subjective thing, and it was more based on feelings, who the people involved are, and what is the fastest conclusion we can come to so that we can just put all this ugliness behind us and we can all just move on regardless if that's the correct answer or not. Because of arsenic, they had to start working harder to figure out what's actually the truth. Not necessarily what we feel is most convenient, but what actually happened. And so this also details all of the stuff that they started doing to be able to test for, is there arsenic in this? How much is there in this? How much is there compared to if, they wore an arsenic dress and had wallpaper full of arsenic in their room and were eating arsenic tablets and blah, blah, blah. Were the levels higher than that implied someone else was adding to all of that daily arsenic? Was the person having symptoms that were in line with someone actively being overtly poisoned on purpose with arsenic? Or, was it just a case of, oh, just go out to the countryside for some fresh air, which was literally just because the countryside wasn't full of arsenic. This was a thing that really helped keep my mind together during the dark days of the pandemic, because it was just so clinical and dry and non-fictional that my brain was just able to latch onto this special interest and just learn a thing for no greater purpose other than that I just wanted to learn it, in order to be able to ignore all the horribleness that was going on in the world during that time period. I want to say I highly recommend this book, but the thing is, like I said, you gotta really have a special interest reason for wanting to read a book like this. I highly recommend it in that it is, one, so accurate. Y'all, they got receipts all up in this book. Just the bibliography, she thick. She thick to match this book. The amount of research that went into this and just all of the factual little footnote things of different documentation they have resourced, this is 100% for realsies. And it was fascinating. And what was so fascinating about it was seeing how everything is so interconnected, which I greatly enjoy. Seeing the who, what, why, when, and where behind why things are the way they are. So this was so up my alley. So if you're that kind of person, this is so for you, because it so shows you all those interdependencies between daily life and socio-political, economic stuff. This is for you. So I highly recommend this if you're that kind of person that would enjoy a big, thick tome about some information your brain can soak up like a sponge. So I hope y'all enjoyed this video. If you did, please be sure to give it a like. And if you're new, subscribe. All right, y'all. Thank you so much for watching. Take care. Bye-bye.